swap projects, but this is another 2006 BRM Jetta. I actually put a camshaft in it to start with, and it has the DSG 6-speed auto currently, and it's on its last leg. It's just slipping, and then it quit working in most of the gears. Going through what we could do to fix it. My brother-in-law decided he'd rather just shoot for the 6-speed manual tranny since it bolts right in. And so we're going to go over a 6-speed swap, which should be very similar for most of these older TDIs. Anyways, we're going to go over it and hopefully help you guys out if you want to try something like this. Alright, so to start with, you're going to pull your air box out and your battery tray, your battery, get all that out of the way. It's kind of cool if you look back in here, the clutch pedal hole is already there with a rubber grommet in it, so you just slide the clutch in and go. And then the cooler for the AC, or for the automatic tranny, it links to the oil cooler down here, and so you can just reroute it right into the head here and get rid of that altogether. Then you just have your starter wiring, your connector right here for your automatic tranny, and that's about it. If you're running the older engines, there's a few more plugs, but make sure and just label everything so you know what it went to, and you can see if you're going to need it for the electrical later. And then go ahead and get these bolts here loosened up on the axles right away, because you got to have it on the ground to do that. So yeah, so now we're going to pull the bell housing bolts, and those are kind of hard to get to back in here. And then the shifter levers back here too. It's a little tight. There's almost more room on the older engines. But anyways, that's where we're at so far. Alright, so once you've got these bell housing bolts, and I forgot to mention there's one inside of here after you pull the starter off, then you want to make a brace here to hold the engine up, at least if you're going to be on a lift where you can't lift it up with a jack underneath. Set something up there, and then you can loosen these mount bolts up until they're just maybe a 1/4 inch loose, and then lift the engine up until you can loosen those by hand so you can tell that the mount's loose. And then you will be ready to finish separating the tranny from the bottom. And so we're going to lift it up and go from there. Alright, so once you get a jack under here and get some stress off of there, we got the mount pulled out up top, so it's completely sitting on the stand here. Then you're going to go ahead and take out these bolts here on the subframe. It's kind of nice they have that instead of having to take the ball joint off. Pop off your sway bar link, then get those nuts out of the end here, and once you pull this down, you'll be able to just push this right off and your axles come right out. You can take them off if you want. Those bolts are pretty stubborn though, and it honestly comes out pretty easy leaving them in. And then go ahead and get the rest of your bolts underneath here. Went ahead and took out these subframe bolts here, except for a couple of them, and dropped the subframe down. You can see here about 1 inch. Just give us a little more clearance when we're coming out of here, because it's a little tight through here. And that's about it. There's one bolt right here that is easy to forget. Other than that, as you can see, the tranny is loose. So it's ready to see if we can wiggle it out of here. Alright, well, we got her out. It's definitely a struggle. This, you can see here, this DSG is quite a bit bigger, especially on this back side here, than the 6-speed, and especially the 5-speed. I've done the 5-speed swap on an MK4, and that was a lot less struggle getting this tranny out of here. A couple of things I forgot to mention. There's a dust cover right back here with a little 10mm bolt. If you can get that off, that helps. And I also forgot to mention finishing getting these 2 bolts off of the shifter linkage there. And after that, it's pretty much loose. You just really have to twist that tranny up to get the CV axle section over here out, and even maybe pry down on the subframe a little bit to get your room, but it's squeezed out of there, and we're ready to start the process of going back together. The order doesn't really matter, but obviously get the clutch put on, and it's way easier to do the clutch pedal. You can see that hole again right up there. Do that now while the tranny's out, and then you're going to end up having to, I believe, get up into here. I can't remember if you have to take this exhaust and the shield down or not. You do on the MK4, but I will definitely include that in the next part of this, and we'll go from there. Okay, so next up on the shifter, you don't have to pull it all the way off, but it's a lot easier if you can get the whole shifter off here, get it out of the way, and then take your little ashtray section out. Up here you can see there's 2 bolts for the shifter there, and then you probably could get to them way easier if you took the center console all the way out, but you can snake in here, and straight down there is your other 2 bolts. But unfortunately then it comes out through the bottom. So once you've got those bolts off, all your plugs unhooked, you can go ahead and get back underneath and get the exhaust and the heat shield out of the way. Okay, and I almost missed this crossbar here. You can see it. It's got some T20 screws from either side. If you pop this panel down, you can get that off, and then the actual nuts that hold the shifter up are right there underneath. Let's see, and then after that it just about falls out. Alright, from underneath here there's going to be a crossbar. Let's see, right here. It goes over, pull that guy off, and then this exhaust flange here slides back and you can pull the exhaust down. There's also 2 bolts here, and then I opted to cut the heat shield right here rather than pull it all the way off, all the way back. So I think you could snake it out of there if you wanted to take that all out, clear back to there. But once you get that out, you can see the shifter here is underneath the car. Alright, so once you get this shifter plugged back up in here, goes right back into the same holes, and just like that you've got a stick shift. So we're going to leave that apart for now, just to make sure we don't need to mess with any of the wiring. And once we move down here, take apart all the covers here, you can see, and then right here there's already there's already the hole right here for the clutch pedal. You just gotta pull the insulation out and it's already pre-cut and everything. Now if you get the kit, it comes with a different brake pedal here that is for the clutch, but rather than pull that off, we're actually just going to take this plate off because that's the only difference between the automatic and the manual brake pedal. But yeah, so then our clutch pedal will just slide right into there and get the bolts in, and we'll be ready to get that all plumbed in. Alright, so you can see our clutch pedal is in right here. The line going to the tranny is at the bottom here. And then this line here, at least on the MK5, it already has a tube stubbed out for the brake fluid. So you can run right off of the brake reservoir on it. So that's all ready to go. We've got our shifter cables here ready to bolt onto the tranny. We got our kit came with the original clutch and flywheel off of the MK6, so that bolts right to the older TDI. It'll be any of them really, the ALH or the BW or the BRM. They all share the same crank bolt pattern. So a few more things to button up here and we'll be ready to slide the transmission in. Alright, so we got the new tranny up here on the stand, ready to tuck it up into here. And I didn't really explain it when we were pulling it out, but the differential side where the axles are, you've kind of got to tuck the whole thing up at an angle with this up through this hole here to get it in. It is really, there's only one way it fits, but if you get it just right, it slides in. Alright, so got the 6-speed manual in there, pretty well bolted in. It is so much easier than getting that automatic in and out of there. There's a lot of space on either side. And pretty cool. The motor mounts and everything are just really almost the same. So everything bolts right in there. There were a few bell housing bolts that are different, including the starter bolts. So you're going to have to check on that ahead of time because they're super long. They're about 7 inches long. I had some from an old MK4 automatic that I pulled out and they were the same. But if you don't have spare bolts like that, you're going to have to acquire some, as well as back in there, I don't think I can get my light on there, but there's another mount for these shifter mounts it goes into the bell housing bolt, has a stud sticking out of it, and that was not on the automatic, so you need another bell housing bolt there that has a stud sticking out for this mount. And that, I'm not sure if those were supposed to come with the kit or they fell out, but either way I had spares from other swaps, so it wasn't a big deal for me, but you're going to want to acquire those ahead of time. As well as this snap fitting for the clutch slave. Didn't have one of those right off, so I made one out of a piece of wire for now, but we're going to order one in. But yeah, you can see the slave back here clips right in, and that hose fits right in there. And then the upper hose went right into this stub that was already out for the extra line off of the brake cylinder there. And yeah, other than that, pretty much squared away. We just got to get the CV axles in underneath and get the dog bone mount under there, get the starter on, And we're about done with the mechanical side of this. Also figured out this ground cable here that was going to the motor mount. These motor mount bolts are completely different. And so we ended up running it over here to this bolt underneath the shifter just to give it somewhere to get ground without having to do too much work. So, okay, so everything's in underneath. The MK6 CV axles obviously bolt to the tranny fine, and they slide right into the MK5 hubs, and that bolt goes right back on the inside there. It's a little dark to see it, but anyways, and then the wishbone mount here bolts on the same way, and that's pretty much it underneath. It's all buttoned back up and ready to get it started. Well, as you can see, I already went for a test drive here, and I'm not going to be able to show everybody the electrical to make it 100% factory. My brother-in-law opted to just bypass mostly everything. He's not worried about the reverse lights or the clutch safety for the starter. So that being said, we just went ahead and bypassed that and went with our own wire to the starter here. And you can either put it on a relay and then tie it into the key wire that way if you want to just bypass that stuff. And then we're also not going to mess with a clutch disable for the cruise. So those things, if you want to do that, you'll have to do a little bit of side research there. But anyways, my brother-in-law likes his push button starter. So the biggest things, once you've got it in here without any tuning or anything like that, you're going to start initially with having the check engine light and the traction control light. But with the starter bypass, it will fire up and it'll go down the road just fine other than the cruise control. So unfortunately, getting the check engine light off and the traction control off is not as easy as the older cars. It does require a reflash of the ECU from your tuning company or wherever. But it's nice to, if you don't already have a tune, go ahead and get one at this time anyway to bump these things up, because there is a lot of power potential. And that's another advantage of going with the MK6 clutch and flywheel. It's already rated to hold way more power, and so this has a stage 4 Malone tune on it, and it's holding it no problem. So I'll go ahead and give you guys a video here at the end of the RPM drop from 5th to 6th, but it's on the road and going along. And stay tuned, I'll give you an update when I get the computer reflashed and get all the lights off the dash and everything working the way we want it to. Alright guys, so here we are cruising at about 70 mile an hour in 5th gear here. So the whole reason for the swap, drop her down to 6th, and we're cruising at just over 2,000 RPM. That should make for some pretty sweet fuel mileage. So super excited about that. And anyway, stay tuned and we'll get the lights cleared up on the dash here, and I'll let you know how all that works. But thanks for watching.